Hello everyone, my name is Saroj, student ID 250019, and today I am presenting the incident response plan I developed for Southern Healthcare Group after ransomware attack. This presentation is for ICT702, IT governance and risk management. Before I get into the details, here is what I will cover. I will walk through what happened at SSG, how the attack unfolded, the damage it caused, and then the six-phase response plan I built around it. After that, I will look at how this maps to governance frameworks and security standards, go through the risk register, and finish with my recommendation. Executive summary. So what actually happened? Southern Healthcare Group was hit by a major ransomware attack that affected six medical centers and two hospitals. That's not a small footprint, and this is an organization running critical patient services across multiple sites. And all of it got caught up in this. The attackers demanded 3 million Australian dollars. They didn't just encrypt files and walk away. They seized the group's backup cryptographic keys first, which meant SSG couldn't simply restore from backup and ignore the ransom note. That's the part that makes this incident serious rather than routine. The impact on the ground was immediate. 35,000 patient records were exposed out of total base record of 450,000. The EMR system, the electronic medical record system, went down completely, and staff had to fall back to paper records. Anyone who's worked in a hospital knows what this means for speed and accuracy of care. My report covers a six-phase incident response, five governance frameworks, and a full risk register, which I will take you through over the next few slides. Incident analysis. Let's look at how the attack actually progressed because the sequence matters for understanding where the failures were. It started with phishing. Attackers sent malicious attachments to employees, and that gave them their initial foothold. From there, they moved laterally. They escalated privileges across internal network segments. They tell us straight away that internal segmentation wasn't strong enough to contain them once they were in. The third stage is the one I would flag as the most important, the credential theft, especially targeting backup credentials. This wasn't opportunistic. The attackers weren't looking for the key to the backup before they did anything else. That's a staged, deliberate approach. They wanted to remove SLG's ability to recover before they triggered the encryption. Then came the fourth stage, final payload deployment and $3 million ransom demand. If I had to name the single critical failure in this chain, it's this. There was no separation between the production environment and the backup environment. Once the attackers had escalated privileges in production, there was nothing stopping them from reaching the backup too. That's one architectural gap in is really what turned a conditionable breach into a full-blown crisis. Now, operational impact. Now, what did this actually mean day to day for SNG? On clinical and operational side, staff had to shift to paper record almost overnight. That brings a real risk of transcription errors and delays in getting hold of patient records when it matters. Booking and checking in systems went down too, so patients faced treatment delays simply because the normal administrative pathway wasn't available. And because the ERMS system was the thing tying departments together, communication between them broke down as well. On the data privacy and compliance side, this is a confidentiality incident and not just an availability one. 45,000 patient records were exfiltrated before the encryption even happened, which makes this a major data breach on its own right. Under the Privacy Act 1988 and the National Data sorry for the pause, and the notifiable data breach screen. This had to be reported. And what I want to be clear on this point. The regulatory and reputational exposure here is extreme, regardless of whether SSG pays the ransom. Paying doesn't undo the breach notification obligation, and it doesn't guarantee the data wasn't already copied elsewhere. Response phase one, two, three. This is where I get into the response plan itself. I have structured it around 6 phases, and I will cover this in the first three now. And I'll cover the first three now. Phase one is preparation. This means defining clear roles for the individual response team, implementing immutable air gap backups. So a repeat of this specific failure isn't possible. And running regular phishing simulations and tabletop exercise so the team isn't improvising for the first time during a real incident. Phase two is identification. The team needs to identify the actual scope of the breach using firewall logs, Active Directory logs, and Azure logs, and confirm hard numbers. In this case, the 35,000 exfiltrated records. This is also the point where legal and executive notification protocols get triggered and where the Privacy Act notification clock starts running. The third phase is containment, isolate the impacted servers, terminate any compromised accounts, and disable VPN access tied to backup credentials specifically. The one thing I wanted to highlight here, containment action needs clinical leader approval before they are carried out. In a hospital environment, shutting down a system isn't purely an IT decision. It can affect patient safety, so clinical leadership has to be in loop before anything gets isolated. So, response phase 4 to 6. Moving on to the second half of the plan, phase 4 is eradication, rebuild system from known cleanup images so the persistent mechanism the attackers left behind are actually removed, not just papered over. Reset every credentials in the environment, not only the one known to the compromised people. At this stage, you can't be fully confident about what was and wasn't touched, and verify that every backdoors are gone. Because the last thing you want is a second encryption event a few weeks later. Phase 5 is recovery, EMR, restoration comes first. That's the patient safety priority. Schedule and admin system come back in later waves. Everything reconnects into a monitor segmented environment so the team can catch any sign of rein- reinfection early rather than after it's spread again. Phase 6 is lesson learned. Run a formal post-incident review to identify root causes, update the risk register and security policies based on what that review finds, and provide assurances to the regulator, the OAIC, that corrective actions has actually been taken. The point I would stress across all 6 phases is this: EMR recovery isn't an IT backlog item. It's a patient safety issue and it needs to be treated with that priority from phase 1 through phase 6. So, the government frameworks. I want to step back from the technical response now and talk about governance because that's really the core argument of this report. This was a governance failure and not just a technical one. I have mapped the incident against three frameworks: COBIT 2019, focus on APO 13, security management, and DSSO2, incident management, and its places ultimate responsibility on the board of directors for IT oversight. That's a deliberate design feature of COBIT. It doesn't let accountability stop at the IT department. ITIL4 treats EMR restore as a major incident within the service value system, and it draws a distinction that I think is genuinely useful here between incident management, which is about restoring access quickly, and problem management, which is about finding and fixing the actual root cause so it doesn't happen again. Sorry about that. ISO 38500 takes the principle of responsibility and conformance, and it requires proof of due diligence in how IT risk was supervised. Both before and after the event applied to SSG, it highlights a specific gap. There were no adequate controls around backup, credential availability, and that's exactly the gap the attackers exploited. Now, for slide 8, security standards. Alongside the governance framework, I looked at two security standards specifically: ISO 2701, 27001. 2022 points out to Annex 1 gaps in backup security and access control, specifically A.8.13 and A.9. The conformities are clear: no separate controls for backup credentials and insufficient login and monitoring that would have picked up the lateral movement earlier. The corrective action here is a formal process to close that detection gap. NIST CSF 2.0 gives us the governed function which addresses board level oversight and accountability for strategy and identify functions, which highlight that need for a proper inventory of critical access, and patient record absolutely belong in that category. One advantage of NIST here is that it gives insurers and regulators a common language and reporting structure, which matters when you are dealing with multiple external parties after an incident like this. And I want to underline the statutory point again because it's central to the whole report. Under the Privacy 1988 exfiltration of 35,000 record trigger a mandatory notification to the OAIC and affected individuals. Health information is treated as highly sensitive, so the obligation is not optional or discretionary. Now, the risk registered, I have focused on the four risk rated extreme because those are the ones that need immediate board level action. R1 is recurrence of ransomware via phishing email. The likelihood of it is high, impact is also high, the mitigation is mandatory, multi-factor authentication across all accounts, quarterly phishing simulations, and better attachment sandboxing. Another extreme risk is R3, which is backup credentials being compromised again. The likelihood of it happening again is a medium, but impact is extreme. Given what we just saw happen, the mitigation is online, immutable backups with credentials stored in a separate vault that has no path back into production. R4 is extended EMR downtime, harming patient safety, likelihood high, impact is extreme. This needs proper contingency procedures, EMR prioritized in any recovery sequence, and a clinical continuity plan that actually adheres, not just written down. R6 is the confirmed exfiltration, 35,000 records, likelihood confirmed. Since this has already happened, impact is extreme. The mitigation is an independent forensic investigation, data loss prevention tooling, and encryption of data at rest going forward. All falls in the extreme bad, which means immediate board level action and not a line item for next quarter IT roadmap. Now, recommendation. Based on all of that, here is what I'm recommending, starting with identity and data resilience. First, mandatory multi-factor authentication. It needs to go on all remote access, administrative accounts, and backup accounts. And it needs to happen immediately. There was this entry point for the whole attack, so it's the highest priority fix. Second is backup isolation. Backups needs to sit on immutable air-gapped media, kept strictly separate from production credentials. If it had already been in place, the attacker's entire strategy of chasing backup credentials would have failed at step one. Third, network segmentation. The EMR network needs to be separated from the broader corporate IT environment so that if attackers get a foothold somewhere, lateral movement into clinical system is much harder. Fourth is continuous training, quarterly phishing simulations run consistently, not as a one-off exercise after an incident. Phishing was the entry point here, and staff awareness is a real control, not a tickling, box tickling exercise. Now, the second set of recommendation is about detection and compliance. I am recommending a third-party forensic investigation, bringing in external experts to verify the actual scope of data exfiltration. This matters both for accurate regulatory reporting and for insurance claim, since internal finding alone may not carry the same weight. Next, endpoint detection and response. Deployed across all servers and endpoints, so lateral movement and credential misuse get picked up early, ideally before an attacker reaches anything like backup credentials. Third, biannual tabletop testing, so the individual response team and leadership are actually practiced in their role before a real event, not learning them under pressure for the first time. And fourth, statutory regulatory reporting to the OAIC and the affected patients under the notifiable data breaches scheme. So to meet SHG's legal obligations in full, these are the four recommendations mapped directly into the govern and identify function of NIST CSF 2.0, which ties this back to the framework alignment I covered earlier. So, to bring it together in conclusion, the first takeaway is that patient safety comes first. Cybersecurity in healthcare setting isn't a sided issue for IT department to manage on its own. It's a core part of clinical care, and this incident shows exactly why. Second, governance is essential. Board level oversight and genuine alignment with framework like NIST and ISO is what builds long-term resilience. Without that, technical fixes alone won't hold. Third, the immediate priorities are clear: MFA multi-factor authentication implementation, backup isolation, and meeting the statutory and regulatory notification requirements. And fourth, resilience come through testing, regular tabletop exercise, and phishing simulations build a genuine culture of security over time. They are not a formality. That covers the full incident response plan for Southern Healthcare Group. Happy to take any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to present this presentation.